Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I want to welcome you all to a very important training session this morning. I cannot think of anything more timely than this. Before we start, I'd like to offer a moment of silence for the recent tragic loss of RPD Officer Tony Mazurkiewicz. Thank you for that. Again, I want to welcome you all this morning to this program, which is so incredibly timely. I want to start by thanking Sheriff Todd Baxter and his great ROCTAC team. This program is an innovation. It started here with the sheriff and his team. It is all about preventing, it's all about responding and hopefully recovering from these tragic incidents that we've seen here and across the country. It is something that all of us have to be part of. We are encouraging you after today to reach out to the sheriff and his team for a follow-up, reach out to the chamber if we could be helpful to connect you to the sheriff and his team. This is a start, but the most important thing is the follow through, because there's no doubt these incidents can happen, they can happen anywhere. But we so much appreciate the sheriff and his team for what they have done, what they have created here, and we're blessed to have them. So without any further ado, the original facilitator for this morning took sick this morning very early, so we have a great fill-in. I'm proud to bring up Amy Young, who is no secret or no stranger to this community. She is the communications director for the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, but she also has had a long and great career in local journalism, a 20-year career with Spectrum as a news anchor and reporter, several years at Channel 8, and we're glad to see her back. So please welcome back to the podium, Amy Young.
Thank you very much for those kind words, Bob. I appreciate it very much. And good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to be your MC this morning at the Rochester Trends Taking Action Against Targeted Violence, brought to you by the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, and ROCTAC. Thank you again for coming. I am confident that today's conversation will enlighten, inspire, and evoke positive steps toward increasing the safety of our community. I am thankful to not only our law enforcement agency, but our partners in law enforcement as well, for being with us this morning during such a difficult time. This presentation would not have been possible without the generous support of our sponsors, who made it reality for us to have this engaging conversation and better understand how to keep your employees and organizations like yours safe from any potential targeted violence. That said, please allow me to give a huge shout out to our generous sponsors. The Rochester Trends series sponsor, Harris Beach. The All Access event sponsor, Chase and Indotronics Avani. Please join me in giving them a huge round of support. In the interest of time and to ensure that we stay on schedule, I will not be reading our speaker bios. However, I do encourage you to use your phone to scan the QR code on your program agenda to read them all at your convenience. And with that, please welcome our speakers for this morning's first presentation discussing the prevention phase. Please welcome Andrew Lehman, Manager, Worldwide Corporate Security for Kodak. Joseph Testani, ROCTAC Program Manager and FBI. And Sergeant Greg Wildman with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office and our ROCTAC Coordinator. Please join me in giving all of our speakers a round of applause.
Thank you. So, when we talk about targeted violence, why are we all here today? Why are we here about targeted violence? Targeted violence, we usually think of mass casualty attacks. They're increasing in frequency in this country, they're increasing in deadliness in this country, and it happens at different kinds of venues, anywhere there's a public gathering, whether it's the Boston Marathon or, tragically and more recently, the Buffalo Tops. It's not limited, targeted violence is not limited to mass casualty incidents. It can be domestic related, and in fact, a lot of workplace shootings actually have domestic roots. They manifest in the workplace. But the public needs answers, right? The public wants answers on how we're going to prevent these from occurring in the first place. We're going to talk more about that in just a moment. So what are we talking about? We're talking about targeted violence, and we want to define that, because targeted violence has to do with premeditated, intentional violence that's usually the result of somebody who harbors a grievance or a set of grievances. Whether they're real or perceived doesn't matter. And the only way they can resolve that grievance is through an act of violence. That's different from other kinds of violence that might be emotional, that might be intentional, but those are usually over things like money or power, or if someone comes home to find a situation that makes them very angry and they react impulsively. Street violence, those types of violence, that's different than targeted violence. ROCTAC is about preventing targeted violence. Thank you. And what are the types of targeted violence? Well, there's obviously political motivation, there's domestic motivation, so it doesn't have to be a mass casualty attack. Other types are workplace violence, and as I said earlier, it could be domestic violence that manifests itself in the workplace. Stalkers, if you remember the reporter on the West Coast that was stalked and ultimately murdered on live TV, that was an act of targeted violence. It was premeditated, it was intentional, it was over a grievance. And of course, public figures, and as we mentioned earlier, mass murders.
Thank you, Sergeant Wildman. No good? Is this on? Yeah, very good. Thank you, Sergeant Wildman. The public demanded an answer, and the good news is there is an answer. Academics and law enforcement agencies like the FBI and Secret Service have been studying this problem for decades. If you think about the types of targeted violence Mr. Wildman just talked to you about, terrorism, the FBI promised to be preventative after 2001, the terrorist attacks of 2001, and Secret Service, of course, is constantly trying to prevent the assassination of our leaders. That is another type of targeted violence. And the system that they developed is actually represented here on the screen for you. What they found was they were looking for a profile, like the behavioral analysis unit. When they look at serial killers, there's profiles of serial killers depending on the type of victims, and law enforcement thought there would be a profile of someone who was going to go on and commit this mass casualty attack. Sadly, there isn't a profile, but what they did find during their studies was that there was a series of behaviors that each person who goes on to commit a mass casualty attack goes through. And since behaviors are observable, they're reportable, and if you report them to a team like ROCTAC, they can manage the person and help them understand why violence is not an acceptable resolution to the problems in their lives. And typically what we see is individuals who ascend what we call the pathway to violence are individuals who have brittle personalities. They have a difficult time dealing with the stress in their lives. Unlike you or I, simple problems for them are big problems, and for various reasons they think the resolution to this problem and to get some relief for their grievance is to commit some type of an attack. And at ROCTAC, we give them the services to make them a little bit stronger, deal with the stressors in their lives, and very simplistically, but much more complicated, help them get off this, or what we call off-ramp them from this pathway to violence. So each one of these stages has a behavior that is associated with it, a series of behaviors, and as you can see, they escalate up this ladder until you get, sadly, to an attack if left unchecked. When we see or hear about a behavior, we can determine where that person might be on this pathway. And at the top of that pathway, unfortunately, they're too close to attack, and we utilize law enforcement services. But ROCTAC is there to try and intervene before they get to the top of that pathway.
And just if I just specifically, when you look at the orange part here, the research and planning and preparation, that's an area just before breach and attack, but law enforcement really doesn't have a lot of power to prevent the attack there. There's no law against looking up 100-round drum magazines for an AR-15. There's no law against going to Home Depot or Mayors or Lowe's and purchasing things that you can commit an act of mass murder with. So law enforcement isn't always the best option, and the thing about ROCTAC is now you have a consortium of, it's a multidisciplinary group. There are other ways to intervene and off-ramp that person from that pathway.
That's a great point. Thank you, Sergeant Wildman. What we're doing is offering our community another tool to put in the toolbox besides the law enforcement tool. So what we're talking about today is prevention, and then the center portion of this slide, you see chaos. Sadly, that is if an attack occurs, and then recovery. The sheriff and the chief deputy are going to talk to you today about that chaos portion and what you can do to help your business or organization recover. Today, Andy, Sergeant Wildman, and myself are up here talking to you about the prevention end of that. And my personal belief is in our country, we've spent a lot of time on the right side of this screen as you face it on the recovery portion. We haven't spent as much time on the prevention. And I would liken this to you, think of it like a fire. It's your business or organization. Think of where we are right now. We prepare for a fire that causes damage to our institutions and possibly our employees by having a smoke detector and a fire extinguisher, right? We want to know before a fire happens so that there is no damage to our buildings or damage to our people. But if, God forbid, a fire should happen to take place, we have a fire extinguisher there to help minimize that impact. The prevention, ROCTAC, is your smoke detector, and what the sheriff and the chief deputy are going to speak to you about later on, you can think of as like a fire extinguisher or a sprinkler system. In this very building, I guarantee you, we have some alert system that's going to tell you before a fire happens and damages this building. When I come out and talk to groups, we're sitting here focused on it, and I'll tell you, if I mentioned Virginia Tech, what do you think of? Sadly, I'm going to guess we think of the active shooter that occurred there, or Columbine, right? We know what those names are synonymous with. Companies spend a lot of money on their branding. As a matter of fact, on the recovery phase, I'll tell you, Virginia Tech spent millions of dollars trying to rebrand itself. Not to be mean to Virginia Tech or disparaging, but how did that work out? You can't recover from that with your brand. The effort and energy, a little bit should be spent on the prevention side, and I'm here to tell you this formula works. We've been doing it for 30 years in the FBI to use it to prevent terrorist attacks before we started the off-ramping piece. Andy?
Thanks, Joe. Exactly. So I think as Joe was talking about, we're talking about preventing this stuff, right? We're talking about what can we do in our businesses, at our schools, what can we do right now, informing our employees, informing everyone that's on our site, how do we prevent these types of things? So up here we have 3 steps, right? We have awareness, reporting, and management. Everyone knows see something, say something. ROCTAC is about see something, say something, do something, right? Everyone understands see something. Everyone understands reporting it to say something, but then it gets lost sometimes. Companies, HR, legal, corporations, we look at liability. Responsibility outweighs liability, and that's why we're here to see something, say something, and then do something. So as your folks are out there, your employees, your students, people that are working on site, they're seeing stuff, they need to report that stuff, and when it comes to you, you need to do the right thing and report that as well. Get that to ROCTAC, let us vet through that, and allow us to be that aspect that does something. So here it is, right? Go ahead and read that. ROCTAC represents a consortium, right? That's what Sergeant Wildman was talking about. This is a unique group where we take a vast majority of community resources and we put them under one umbrella. And everyone under that umbrella has one task, one goal, and they're motivated to make a safer outcome, safer situation, safer people. So what you have is a group of folks that all have different knowledge, have different authorizations, have different options for companies, for schools, for people. And sometimes you're out there by yourself. You're working with your HR department, you're working with your legal, you're trying to find out who can help me. And a lot of those times you run into red tape, you run into people who don't want to help, you run into people who want to push you off to someone else. That's not what ROCTAC is. ROCTAC is a group there for one reason, and it's to help those situations. So,
And can I add in there, Andy?
Absolutely.
Everybody in this group has been trained in that system and are subject matter experts in targeted violence prevention and threat assessment and management.
It's also, as it says on the bottom there, we're not limited to a specific environment or a type of offender or target. If you feel like there is a threat, please report that. As you can see up here, we've got a participating member agencies. This is a large group. I think it's everybody that represents parts of ROCTAC right now. So you'll see everyone from law enforcement to mental health to animal control to schools to companies. Everyone is there to get creative, try to create solutions for everyone. If I can just take a moment here as well, any of our partners here are participating members of ROCTAC. Could you guys just stand up for a moment? I know that we're going to do this presentation, but if you guys have other questions, if you guys need a familiar face within this organization, look at a couple of the people that are standing next to you. Those people can answer the questions just like we can. And I want you to know that this is a very dedicated group, dedicated for the safety of this community. Thank you, guys.
So all those different agencies, they're organized into different functional groups within ROCTAC. We have private sector agencies, nonprofits, government, all different functional groups with some common training and threat assessment. But what's the process? How does it work? If you were to bring a case to ROCTAC or have a person of concern in your organization, what's going to happen? So if that person's identified, and again, it's behavior-based, right? You see some changes in a person that you're concerned about and you think it's possible that they are on this pathway towards violence. Well, if you reach out to ROCTAC, we'll ask some questions. We have some guides. There's a lot of questions that maybe people don't think of. We're going to present those questions. Some of them can be answered, some of them can't. Either myself or Joe or both of us can come out and meet with someone and help them do that initial assessment. And from there, you would come to the ROCTAC meeting and present the case. It's a 10 or 15-minute presentation, bullet pointed with a pertinent information. It doesn't have to be a giant PowerPoint. It's a brief, to-the-point presentation. Once that occurs, then you've got a group of subject matter experts in the room. All of them have resources at their disposal, and all of them have the authority to utilize those resources in a management plan. Nobody has to go through 6 levels of command. And so now the issue gets batted around the room and brainstormed, and things get identified. What are the mitigation factors? What are the risk factors? Where is there support needed? What resources can we use for those support services? And who needs to get involved? And when you leave the ROCTAC meeting, which is usually about an hour, you should have a strategy for managing this person of concern in your organization. We don't take the case from everybody. You still maintain control over that. You can utilize part of that plan, all of that plan, none of that plan. And you'll get support to make that happen from the people involved. So for instance, if the sheriff's office has to make some referrals or utilize some resources to help you execute that management plan, that's what we do. And we work directly with you to do that. It's not a one and done. There's follow-up. So, and it's not unusual at all for this, usually is follow-up. ROCTAC meets in the 2nd and 4th week of every month. So at the next meeting, usually the organization will come back, talk about what went well, what needed to change, what didn't go well, and the management plan continues. Maybe it gets modified, but we continue until we're convinced that that person is managed off that pathway to violence. That's the process. Any agency can present a case, right? This isn't limited to certain types of organizations. But again, I want to stress the ownership stays with the organization. We don't take something from somebody. You don't lose control over something. There may be instances where an agency has to be involved, like law enforcement, but the approach is restorative where possible. Again, as I said earlier, it's at your discretion what you're going to use and what you're not going to use.
Thanks, Greg. Just to reiterate something there that the sergeant was just saying, ROCTAC does support you through that entire situation. It's not just the assessment. It's not just the guidance. It's not just follow-ups. It's from the beginning to the end. And I can speak from experience. Sometimes that follow-up is years long, and we're still following up. So I just wanted to reiterate that. I know a lot of companies out there, a lot of schools that are looking at some of this stuff, and they're kind of saying, hey, it sounds like you're sharing a lot of information, right? And a lot of our organizations have legal departments and HR departments and folks that are looking out for company liability, and they kind of say, hey, we got to be worried about these two issues here, HIPAA and FERPA. And I just want to reiterate that if we feel, or you feel, or some of your employees feel, or your students feel that someone could create a safe environment, that someone could hurt someone, HIPAA, FERPA is not going to be involved there. The very idea of trying to prevent these types of situations is what HIPAA and FERPA were created around. So again, if you have questions or you have hesitancies, still reach out. We'll talk about what we can talk about. We'll make sure everyone's comfortable. We'll make sure all the companies, all the schools are aligned. Everyone's comfortable. But I just wanted to let you guys know from the get-go that we are fully HIPAA, FERPA compliant, and no one has to worry about that while they're starting to bring these cases forward to the community here.
So how do you fit in, right? What we want to really present here is to start getting awareness of ROCTAC, the Rochester Threat Advisory Committee, make everybody aware that this committee exists, what we do, and how we can help you. And a lot of times, what comes to ROCTAC as a referral doesn't become a big ROCTAC case. Sometimes it's just a matter of putting somebody in touch with a couple organizations that are the most pertinent, that can help them with their situation without making it a 27-member meeting. But we want to do that. We are available, and Joe and I especially, we do trainings all the time. We do presentations for usually groups that are a little bit smaller than this, but we do presentations on what ROCTAC does and on threat assessment. We want to do more. If you want us to come out to your organization to do a presentation, we'd be happy to do that. We'll have our contact information in just a little bit. Please contact us. That's part of what we want to do. And finally, to steal, I think it's the FBI's term, turning bystanders into upstanders. Great term. We want to turn bystanders into upstanders. How many times have we read about an act of targeted violence where people saw things and they just didn't report them? And the big thing about ROCTAC is you're breaking down these silos. So instead of looking through something from one specific lens, you're looking at it through a comprehensive lens. And the more bystanders you have turning into upstanders, the more comprehensive that lens is going to be, the more effective we're going to be at preventing acts of targeted violence.
Not just you.
Yeah.
It's me too. There we go. I will reiterate what Sergeant Wildman said. We're happy to come out and talk to your group, your company. We understand Andy threw up a slide, awareness, reporting, management. This is a very short form. We're not giving you what to be aware of. We're happy to do that and come out. We're also happy to help you set up your own small threat assessment team. Whatever level of involvement you want to have within this field, we're happy to come out and have the time and latitude, thanks to Sheriff Baxter, to be able to go out and do that for you. But what I'll tell you is, if you don't decide to do that, a couple simple questions you can ask yourself. Sergeant Wildman, Andy, and I actually created these questions for the 911 center. I'm not going to waste your time and read them. We could all do that here, but I'll tell you, walk through the questions for you. If you answer yes to question 1, we should call 911 and the police, right? ROCTAC is not an immediate response group. We like to say a SWAT team. You need immediate help if you think there is immediate danger, and that is your police department that covers the jurisdiction that you live or work in. That we get to question 2, if you answered no to that. If the answer is yes, ROCTAC is your stop. If you remember that slide that we had on with the staircase, the very first step is a grievance or threat. So the very basis for someone escalating up that pathway is very simply identified by most companies, organizations, schools, religious affiliated community meeting houses. You'll come in, they'll have a disagreement with you of some type, they'll verbalize that, they'll obsess on that, or they'll make a threat to you. That's a ROCTAC referral. If you answered no, though, and you get to question 3, a lot of times, sadly, the people that come to our attention are suffering either an emotional crisis or a mental health crisis. And if they're exhibiting that, but there is no threat and there is no grievance, your call should go to one of the FIT teams or PIC teams depending on whether you're in the city or the county. And Greg and I are working with them to help them, as they respond to these, understand that maybe they'll uncover a grievance or other behaviors, and then we can circle it back to ROCTAC. And lastly, again, is it urgent? Like, do you need us today or tomorrow? If the answer to that is yes, then again, right back up to question one, it's an emergency. It's sort of a double check on your checklist. The call should be to 911 and law enforcement. I hope that helps you determine when you should reach out to ROCTAC.
So ultimately, we're trying to balance public safety and with the health and wellness needs of the person at risk, as well as those affected by that person. ROCTAC is truly about helping people. At the end of the day, we want to drill down on the root cause of the grievance or the set of grievances. And it's behavior-based. I mention those two again because if their personality and their issues make them prime or make them susceptible to radicalization, then today the issue might be racial, but tomorrow it might be political. The issue is that they're primed for that radicalization. That might be the root cause. And so that can change. And we want to put those support services out there. It is nearly impossible to say with certainty that an act of targeted violence was absolutely going to occur and then ROCTAC or any other threat assessment team prevented it. In most cases, you can't say it was going to occur until it's too late. There are some rare examples where that's not true. But we can quantify how many people we've helped, right? There are people that are in bad places. They're people of concern. They're affecting organizations. They're affecting families. And they're at risk of committing these acts. We don't know for certain they were going to commit them, but we know that we've improved their lives. And we've done that by, as a group, addressing the root causes of those grievances, offering support services to them, intervening in their lives, getting them to change those behaviors, and off-ramping them from that pathway to violence. Do a couple quick case studies. And we're going to do the 30,000-foot flyby on these case studies. There's a high school student. She comes to school on Halloween dressed as Dylan Klebold, one of the Columbine shooters. The school's a little upset about that. They search her backpack and they find a pretty good-sized knife, and they confiscate that. There's a history with her. There's reports, never actually confirmed, but reports that she's abused cats in the past. We call that novel aggression, sort of practicing violence, but not on your target. She has made some vivid art of violent scenes, very violent scenes. She seems to be obsessed with violence. She's online, she's on the dark web, she's made contacts all over the US, and part of her plan is she wants to make a pilgrimage to Columbine. And she has plans with this kid from Texas to make that happen. She's trying to make it so she can fly out to Texas, pick him up, and go to Columbine for some kind of Mecca. These are all indicators that we should be alarmed. Her home life, she's disconnected from her father. She's pretty angry about that. Her mother probably has some underlying mental health issues. She's very resistant to taking any kind of support for that. So some things happened here, again, as a group, right? So a police officer in that municipality did a fantastic job. I can't say enough good about what she did, of becoming sort of the mentor for this girl, becoming that line of sight, and becoming that confidant for this girl. She desperately needed somebody to look up to, somebody to trust in the adult world, to sort of be that conduit for her. And this police officer filled that role. It's not her job, she filled that role. The FIT team, the forensic intervention team from the Office of Mental Health, worked with the mother, and at one point, the mother was taking services successfully. Long term, that didn't pan out, but they were successful in getting the mother to take some services and reconnect this girl with her father, who lived out of county. And improving that relationship was key. The FBI opened up what's called an assistance case. It's not an investigation. But through probation, they were able to get a lot of information as far as what websites that she was on. The FBI was able to look at some of that and make some contacts about these people on the dark web, because these websites she was on were people that idolized school shooters. She had an admitted sexual attraction to school shooters. And so that's the crowd that she hung out with online. It was dark web, very difficult for someone like me to try to get to. the FBI actually talked to this guy in Texas and said, hey, what are your plans? Tell us more. And obviously, well, he didn't realize this was an FBI case. He got out of that. So they also set us up with a behavioral analysis unit. We did a conference call because there was some confusion here, or some ambiguity about where she really was with some of these things, especially as she started to go through this process of being off-ramp, because you can move up and down that ramp. And the BAU was very helpful, but very quickly we were able to get a conference call with them. Ultimately, the result was that, according to the police officer who was really involved in this, she said you wouldn't recognize her now. She lives someplace different. She lives in a very supportive household. She has a relationship with her father. She has plans. She still does art, but it's not based on violence. This person is a successful young adult. And so was she going to commit an act of violence? We don't know. We'll never know. But is her life better? Absolutely. Without question, her life is better. I'm going to turn it over to Andy for the next case study.
Thanks, Sarge. So this one hits home a little. This was part of an Eastman Kodak investigation that I led, and I won't get into too many details, but I do want to go over some of the finer points here and how I think they could be helpful. If you'll forgive me, I had to take a couple notes on this because I didn't want to miss anything on this. So just to paint the overall picture here, we had an employee who was a model employee, right? 40-year guy, one of those people that you look up to, one of those reliable rocks in the department. Brilliant. And I don't say that because he was a smart guy. I say that because I'm sure however he would have tested, he would have been in the upper echelon. I'm not talking about like 2 or 3 patents, like over almost 100, right? Brilliant at what he does. Friendly, great worker all the way around. Groups, solo, quiet, always respectful. For 40 years, clean shaven, khakis, button down, respectful, clean cut, right? And almost overnight, that changed. Almost overnight, different appearance, different attitudes. Wasn't working well with others, showed up late, interrupted people, was disrespectful, sabotaged projects, political aspirations and biases came into the workplace, family issues came into the workplace, injuries and medications came into the workplace. At one point, there was a weapon that someone had noted that they didn't feel him being weren't comfortable with him having on site, even though it was something as easy as a box cutter, right? Whereas for 40 years, no one would have ever thought different. And the right thing that happened here was that the employees, the team members spoke up, and the supervisors spoke up. And that stuff comes to us. It comes to corporate security. It comes to HR. And we're allowed to take that information and take that seriously. And we're able to escalate that as well. A couple of the things I want to talk about on that. They received a very important line of guidance from ROCTAC, right? So once we got these threats, Kodak looked at it, legal, HR, we all came together and we said, hey, we need help. Hey, who can we talk to on this type of stuff? So we reached out to all of our contacts and we did what we thought was all we could do. And once we got introduced with ROCTAC and we got introduced to other departments and other resources, we realized there was a whole world right here in our community, a whole new world of information and guidance and help that we weren't even aware of was out there. We tapped into that, and ROCTAC was able to come up with guidance that my company could get aligned with, that we were comfortable with. They helped us through different strategies, different plans. Like I said, the follow-up. Same thing as Sergeant was saying, right? I have hundreds of incident reports on this guy and pictures and scary text messages that he sent. Was he going to commit violence? We don't know. But now we know that our folks are safer, our community is safer, that himself is safer, his family is safer, and that's the end goal. A couple things I want to just kind of harp on here from a corporate standpoint. The employees have to be able to trust that they can report these things to you. You have to establish a culture, a training, so that employees feel that not only can they report things to you, but they need to trust that you're going to take it seriously. On the other side of that coin, people like you, yourselves, your departments, you need to take those concerns seriously, and you need to do the right thing. Again, I said this before, responsibility outweighs liability, and you need to do what's right and get this to the right people and develop options and strategies and soft landings and safe situations so not only the people on your property, your businesses, but the entire community can come up with a safer situation. I think one of the things that I was reminded of going through this again the other night before we went through this was a Norman Schwarzkopf quote, and it was, everyone always knows the right thing to do, the hard part is doing it. And I can tell you that once you're faced with these types of issues and red flags, it's very easy to kick the ball. It's very easy to kick the can. It's very easy to say, hey, this isn't entirely it didn't happen on site. Hey, he posted this stuff, but it didn't have a Kodak logo on it. It's not the right thing to do. And I'm telling you, if you can involve the right people, you can make the right decisions, and you can make safe strategies, and you can have happy endings. And I'm here to say that works. And if anyone has any questions from the grievance all the way through, from a termination, from changes of attitudes, please do the right thing and report those things out. That's all I got, Greg.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for that applause and for that incredible presentation to all our presenters. Often the anticipation and prevention of these events seem impossible, but as we just learned, by working together, we eliminate the silos in order to identify ways to take proactive steps in mitigating such tragic events. Now please welcome me in joining in a round of applause for our next speakers for the chaos and recovery phase portion of this presentation. It is my pleasure to introduce Monroe County Sheriff Todd Baxter and Chief Deputy Michael Fowler of the Monroe County Sheriff's Office.
Good looking pictures. As I get into the spotlight, you can see my bald spot here though, so.
I noticed I got stuck with the
Clicker?
evil clicker, so.
Rank has a privilege sometimes. So God forbid, right? That's what the next portion is, God forbid. A ROCTAC or some other mitigation strategy doesn't work. And we're seeing all too often these targeted violence cases occurring throughout our community. And Buffalo could not be more glaring because Buffalo could have really been Rochester. It's only the bad guy's choice. And that racist mass murder executed a plan that hopefully someday there'll be in Binghamton a ROCTAC type model, and if someone sees something, say something, do something. But we know we're not going to prevent every case, and that's the liability we absorb when we started developing ROCTAC. Is we're going to be held accountable someday when a targeted violence case occurs in our community. Why didn't ROCTAC do something about it? So we're very upfront that we're not going to prevent every case, but we're breaking down the silos, breaking down the egos. But if it does occur, that's what the Chief Deputy and I would just like to spend a few minutes talking about, because this is real stuff. Cho is real. That's Virginia Tech. That's Norris Hall. Those are cops pulling people out that have been gunshot victims inside Norris Hall, kids. It's going to occur somewhere. And just to illustrate that, if you read that quote at the bottom, that's from one of the mass murders for Columbine. That was almost 2 years before 9/11. You read the bottom of that quote. The dark web is out there. These kids are talking. These people are idolizing. These people are planning, right? And he's talking about flying airplanes into buildings in New York City before 9/11. So it's real. It's a real threat. The other thing we'll illustrate today is what are we going to do? So we're well trained. We're well versed. We're coming fast. We're coming hard. We're going to minimize that threat with putting police officers towards that target as quick as possible. We'll share a little bit about what we're going to do. But you and I are going to have to interact really quick. there's going to be a lot of confusion. What are we going to do in that first hour is what we want to talk about here, and get you engaged in that conversation more in depth later on.
Okay, so as you've seen this slide before, we've been spending years talking about response to active shooters, response to active killing, and how to recover, things like that. We've even talked about prevention. But as was mentioned in the first half of this presentation, you now have a tool. We talk about prevention, we talk about making changes to your business, we talk about hardening some doors, some locks, access control, all that sort of stuff we've been talking about for years. But what if, right? You need that option. So we're now giving you that option that people have been begging for years, and that's the ROCTAC intervention piece. But we're going to take advantage of the fact that we have such a great audience today, and we're going to add the next piece to this. So ROCTAC's going to hopefully prevent the majority, right? We're going to do the best we can to off-ramp those people. But what if? What if we hit that chaos phase? And that word chaos is perfect. It is going to be chaos. And no matter how much training we have, preparation, it's going to be there. It's all about managing the chaos. It's all about minimizing it, minimizing the damage and the suffering and the grief that comes afterwards. And then getting you, your business, your corporation, but most importantly, your families, right? Your employees and your families back on their feet and getting them back to a place in that recovery phase. We, the United States has a National Incident Management System. We call it NIMS. It's all about how to manage that chaos phase. It originally started because of the fire service, the forest fires out on the West Coast, things like that. They really needed a system to be able to bring some clarity to this chaos phase and how to have everyone working together and accomplishing the same goals and getting there quickly. Well, we're going to need the same thing out of you. You know, the sheriff and I are going to focus on this second half of the presentation on needs. During the chaos phase, the recovery phase, we all are going to have a significant number of critical needs that have to be addressed very quickly. We have needs to be able to resolve the critical incident for you, and you have needs of us to help you get through that chaos phase and well into the recovery phase. So that's what we're going to focus on. But this incident command system is really, you think about it like the military. They're set up with a command system, the sheriff's office, command system, right? We have different levels of authority. We have different decision makers in the room. We need the same thing from you. We cannot resolve this by ourselves. We need you next to us. We need the decision makers. We need those people that have authority to make those decisions and make the resources of your company, your business, your school available to us so that we can quickly and more efficiently help you get through this.
One of the examples up there is facility managers. We at the Tactical Operations Center, that's where the tactics are occurring. That's where the cops are responding. As we watched the other day on Scottsville Road, we'll share a little bit more about that. They're entering that building within 30 seconds upon arrival, but they need a facility manager. So I'll just throw the question out. What's so important in the middle of an active shooter, a mass killing incident occurring in your building, that I need the facility manager next to me? Doors, layouts, locks, air conditioning, airflow. It might not be a gun. It might be a hazardous device that's actually got chemical agents flowing through your HVAC, right? Who can shut that off? What flow of air is coming in? Where's the intakes? Those people are the most knowledgeable people in that first 30 minutes that we need right next to our tactical people, is sharing that. So when information comes in, which is going to be chaotic, and that first 1,500 phone calls to 911, and so this red door keeps on popping up in all this information, and we're just searching for a gunman, and the red door pops up a third time and information coming overnight. And you got a facility manager right next to you going, I know where that red door is. And we're inside a building thousands and thousands of square feet we've never been in, trying to find that red door, when we got a facility manager saying, the red door is actually on the third floor. It enters this part of the building. That's how powerful that could be for us to, put our resources where they need to be. So those facility managers, if you haven't thought about it, and we're only scratching the surface making you think about these things, where is that person going to be, and how do you get them to us as quick as possible?
So facility managers being probably the most important. What else? Who else would we need there? Leadership, right? Anybody want to offer an idea what leadership would provide to us? All right, thankfully, we'll help you out. Another slide has some of that. But think about it. We need access to information. We need somebody that's going to, let's take a school, for instance. We need help blocking the roads, keep traffic from coming in, right? Well, somebody to direct them to go put school buses across the street, whatever that answer is, or bring the school buses available, make them available to us to be able to relocate people. And then one other thing I want to hit on before we switch slides is the human resources piece, right? That's going to be an essential role. And we're not really just looking for that human resource advice. We're looking for those personnel files, right? Access to those personnel files. Where does this employee live? How can we reach out to their family? All that sort of thing, okay?
As we've seen in the terrible example of a response to an active shooter in Texas. But you can see families are going to be there just as quick as everybody else, almost as quick as law enforcement, especially a school, a neighborhood school. They're literally right across the street. And if we're not giving those families information, if you and I are not giving that family information, if we don't have a collection point for them, and there's not an official from your company and a law enforcement official providing them information, they're going to make more chaos for the right reason, right? If we're not telling them we got it, we're doing all we can, and here's what's going on right now, they are going to enter that school or they're going to enter that building because they care. You almost can't blame them, right? Of course, we would all do the same thing. So that personnel director is very important to get with one of our public information officers and get to a collection point and say, all family members come here and we will provide you everything we got as quickly as we can give it to you. If you keep those folks in the dark, they're going to be into the chaos phase with us, and for a good reason.
Okay, so for years, again, we've been talking about this preparation phase. I know I personally have been doing this since probably 2005. So this is a takeaway for you, right? We're not going to read through every one, but there's a few on here that we've already mentioned. It's a reminder for you, and I think these are good. These are being made available to you to take back to the office, right? But there are some real key points up here that need to be thought about, and they help you lead into that identification of a threat. They help you understand when it's time to get involved and to reach out for help with ROCTAC or similar agencies. Remember that point down there in the corner? You know, when the chaos phase hits, that lock out, the lockdown or shelter in place, whatever term you use, and then the evacuate piece, they are not just for schools. They're for families. They're for families shopping in the grocery store. They're for families visiting the public library. It's common sense, right? But if you don't prepare yourself and you don't think about it ahead of time, you're not going to react with any sense of urgency when it comes time. So all of these thoughts, we're just taking advantage of every opportunity to get with the public and with the leaders in the business community to try to share these thoughts and put them in everybody's mind. It's terrible that we have to think about it. It really says a lot about society that we have to spend so much effort and time on this, but we can't afford not to.
And hitting on the slide, so the ROCTAC model, we have 29 participating member agencies right now. Vast knowledge, law enforcement. We got everything from the U.S. Secret Service, I always say, to the local dog catcher, right? For the mutilation of animals, which is one of the targeted violence clues. We have Villa of Hope. We got the Willow Domestic Violence Center. We got the Veterans Outreach Center. Subject matter experts and people that may have some issues, and whether it's domestic violence targeted, right? It doesn't always have to be a mass shooter. We have RIT. We have you name it. We got all these functional groups that you might be back taking this checklist we give you, planning these things, and say, I don't know how to plan around that. Call us. We'll help you with the planning. We'll help you with the preparation of establishing any of these things. We got corporate security directors of national, international companies. They're yours. If you want to talk about camera systems, you want to talk about lockout tools, you want to talk about anything you want to talk about, we got a subject matter expert that can probably help you, or we'll find them for you, just to do all this pre-planning for the chaos phase. So what can you do now? Well, we'll give you a couple tools. If you go on our website at Monroe County Sheriff's Office, we in Paychex prepared a 1-hour video on run, hide, fight. We've all heard that term, run, hide, fight. It's a great term. We love it. And Paychex, huge corporation, couldn't get that information to enough employees, so they did what they usually do and said, let's come up with a real world solution to this problem. And they developed a video with us. So it's very professionally done. It's kind of a lecture with some demonstrations. And so it's talking about these 3 phases. Why would you run? Where would you run? How would you run? What are we talking about hiding? What does that really mean? What are we hiding behind? What's ballistic? What's non-ballistic? And God forbid if you got to fight, it doesn't go too deep into that portion, but I've done many presentations where we actually get up and we barricade the doors, but bad guy comes through. I've done one in a library at Greece once, and they were locking down the doors. Little librarian, we're all stereotyping librarians right now, right? And this is her library. People are coming in with guns. This is only a role play, and I look around and she's got the American flag and ready to harpoon the next guy that comes through the door. So that's run, hide, fight. God forbid that we have to do it, but we'll do that type of training with you. But if you can do anything else, make this part of your professional development in your organization. Watch the video, get a cup of coffee, and make it one of your training days. Really simple stuff.
You notice on the bottom there, the sheriff commented earlier on the Scottsville Road incident. Shortly after that incident, we kind of got some negative attention in the news. We were criticized for responding too strong, too heavy, too many police officers responding. We went way overboard, I think was the term, for a false report of an active shooter. Too bad. I don't have the slightest bit of guilt at all. Let me tell you. And, lately we've seen in the news some different types of responses, and I'm not going to get into that because I don't have all the information, right? But I can tell you what you saw here was completely the opposite. Completely the opposite. We had one deputy by himself, eventually backed up very quickly by some FBI agents, but just by himself on the radio saying, I'm making entry. And that's where we're at now. We're teaching this, we're trying to reinforce it, that a solo officer, deputy, trooper is gonna make that entry by themselves. And it's tough. We don't take, nowhere in our oath of office does it say that we're gonna commit suicide. But yet that's where we are today, is officers, deputies, troopers willing to take that risk. And I can tell you with confidence, you're not going to see that what's happened in other places, you're not going to see that here. And Scottsville Road really proved that. For the past 3 years, we've been focusing on developing a rescue task force model. We've been spending years teaching officers and deputies and everybody how to respond to an active shooter and how to stop that killing. But there's a whole nother phase to it. Anybody heard Stop the Bleed? Everybody know that program? If you don't know that program, please look it up. Stop the Bleed. It's all about what we can do to save lives. Stopping the killing is one thing. Saving lives is a whole nother story. So Stop the Bleed is the name of the program. It's free. It's available to you. The U of R, there's several agencies that provide that support. They will come to you, teach you. We do it. It's all about how to take care of yourself and survive those terrible injuries. But we've also built this rescue task force model. Criticisms over the years have been, how do we rescue people? It takes too long to get them in an ambulance. It takes too long to clear the building and get injured people out of the building. So we have a solution, and it's police officers providing security for firefighters to go into that room and bring them out as quickly as possible. So now you have firefighters willing to go into that risky situation to save lives, and they come in with bags full of tourniquets and pressure bandages, and they start doing first aid. Excuse me. And we're rescuing people while we are still trying to stop the shooter. We've been doing that for 3 years. We have local fire agencies that have been through the training. They've been working with us. Scottsville Road, we had 8 rescue task forces on scene, ready to go into the building within the first 12 minutes. That's huge. It may not mean much to you, but to us, it just blew us away. That we're making progress in the prevention phase. We're making progress getting through the chaos phase and the recovery phase. And, that's never going to stop. We're always going to continue to work that way.
So if you think about these rescues, these are firefighters down here, almost look like in tactical gear with our deputies ready to make entry. The Norris Hall picture we showed earlier of cops carrying kids out, it's not pretty, right? You're trying to drag a dead weight, if you will, bouncing off the ground. It's not. There's nothing pretty about this stuff. But each one of those kids taken out of Norris Hall that was taken out by those cops, each one survived because we got their blood pressure stabilized. We got them to medical professionals as quick as possible, and it's called that golden hour in the medical world. If we can stabilize their pressure and their bleeding within that first hour, you got a likelihood that increases significantly about saving that person's life. Now we can bring the rescuers into the hot environment, if you will, that hasn't been cleared yet. It might take us another 4 or 5 hours to call this building clear wherever it is. All right, but we're bringing people into what the warm, even hot zones sometimes that are lifesavers, and that's a game changer for saving lives. God forbid one of these things happen.
I do have to throw out just to support our teams that are doing this and taking this risk. It's not as easy as it sounds. It's not. This is a whole nother piece of the chaos phase. And it takes a lot of practice and training and rehearsal to be able to do that rescue task force model efficiently. And we've been devoting lots of training hours, money, equipment, all that sort of thing to get everybody on the same page so that we don't make the problem worse, right?
So what do we need? We mentioned a few things. What do you need? I'm sure you have some ideas. We're not going to answer all these questions right now, but I want you to go back to your offices. I want you to go back to your area of responsibilities and ask yourself these questions, and then call us. We'll get a cup of coffee. We'll come out for a 5-hour training program. We'll come out and spend a week with you, whatever it takes to solve these questions. But we're going to have some needs. We mentioned those up front. I need your HR official. I need a decision maker, and I definitely need that person that knows that building better than anybody else, right? That's what I need immediately. What do you need from us? You're going to need information, right? You're going to need reassurance that all is being done that could be done. You're going to need a lot of questions answered in that first hour, that chaos phase. Let's think about these things, and let's get these solved ahead of time that'll help us manage the chaos phase. And we keep on saying that word because it's on our PowerPoints. When we go to NIMS training, I love that slide because we all get nervous about chaos, miscommunication, what's happening, rumors. It's going to occur. So the more we can do to prevent the chaos phase or minimize it is beneficial to us all when, God forbid, it occurs. What does the community and media need? We got to feed that information. We got to feed that information as quick as possible. And we'll just click on this real quick.
She recounts students screaming.
One of the students was injured. He didn't have time to make that desk.
Who was that?
That was Alex Schachter.
Who was killed in Parkland, Florida. A school teacher here testifying in a court case on that. It's real world stuff, people. And we want to minimize this. We want to whitewash it. We want to deny it that it'll ever occur. If the wake-up call of the mass murder in Buffalo was not to the Rochester area, I don't know what could possibly be. The guy was targeting restaurants over on Internet Boulevard, right? The guy was targeting Tops Market on West Avenue. It could have, would have. We don't know. What we don't know is when, where, how many. We have no idea, but there's a lot of things we could do in the preventive maintenance. Do not let this lady come testify about one of her students being murdered, right, if we can prevent it. And if we're going to, God forbid, have one, let's do all we can to help minimize it. And that's what we're trying to get you just to think about today, and we'll help you out anyway to improve those things.
Okay, so we're starting to wrap this up. We're going to summarize here. Again, you have access to these, but please don't underestimate what your employees, what your customers, what your public, and what, most importantly, your families expect from you. They expect you to listen to their concerns. They expect you that if they're gonna be courageous enough to report something that doesn't seem right to them, that you're gonna listen to that and you're gonna take some action. We talk about training. It always has to continue. Training at every level, right? If you bury your head in the sand and you hide from this topic, you're not going to have success. You have to address it up front. You mentally prepare yourself for it, and you take steps that if you cannot prevent it, how are we going to get through it and minimize the loss? You take those steps now.
So ask yourself a question. When's the last time you heard of a mass casualty incident with a fire in a public building? Right? This building caught on fire right now. There are so many systems. The carpet is fireproof. The chairs you're sitting in are fire retardant. The sprinkler system is going to kick on. We got evacuation points all over, marked, right, to get out of this building as quick as possible. The smoke alarm, as I said earlier. But we're not in that mode yet for these mass killers, right? And you have an area of responsibility that you can set up the fire systems to help prevent this. One of them is see something, say something, now we got to do something. That's one of those things. But going back and talking openly with your people about, look, we're not trying to lock this guy up that's scaring the hell out of us. We're trying to intervene and make his life better. This is not a gotcha moment. This is like, how can we help you moment? And they build trust in those information flows too, that they're not going to, narc out their buddy that's having a bad day. And it's not about mental health. It's not about any of those things. It's about how does this person get some help if they need it. If they need it, let us evaluate it. But think about that fire response. When's the last time you heard of mass casualty fire? Because we've done all the preventive maintenance that we could do, possibly as a community on those things. We got fire codes. Well, what's your active shooter code in your building?
I want you to do something for me when you get back to your workplace. I want you to find your common first aid kit wherever you are, right? Whether you're on a machine shop floor, a warehouse, an office, HR, doesn't matter. Find your closest workplace first aid kit. I want you to figure out what's inside of it. If there's a seal on it, don't open it, but look at the inventory sheet, find out what's inside of it. If you have Band-Aids and Neosporin, you know exactly where your company stands on preparedness for something like this. Okay? Just do me that favor.
So we'll hit a few more things. We're not going to go over this in total again for time, but think about these things, these questions, and call us, let us help. We got corporate experts, we got nonprofits, we got mental health experts. If you want to develop protocols, you're a little weak in one spot, you've already started working on these things. We have HR officials that can help you with the HR questions you're going to have. We have legal officials. That HIPAA FERPA was not designed by us. It was designed by our lawyers who went back and researched and say, you can share. What we tell all the people that present to us, and even our participating member agencies, we're not here to violate your general orders, your policies, procedures. So if you still can't say anything because you're a mental health practitioner, hopefully that wasn't a fire alarm, you can't say anything because there's a mental health practitioner, then don't say anything, but come to the meeting and nod, right? Hey, mental health practitioner, you got this guy? I got him. Okay. At least we had that communication. We're not assuming that mental health's working, right? We don't ask you to violate any of your policies and procedures, but we can help you work through those by MOUs, memorandums of understanding, working with our lawyers to understand HIPAA and FERPA a little deeper than what we all assume it says. You can't talk about anything. The law is very clear. If it's an immediate danger, you can talk about it. But you got to be comfortable in your arena, not our arena. So let's talk about those things ahead of time.
Okay, so this slide pretty much sums up here. We're going to end with this. We'll have a Q&A period in just a second, but don't underestimate everything that goes into this. That's the theme, right? We're now the see something, say something. Now you have a do something. That this really is the worst moment probably in our lives when it comes to our facility. Even those of us that are responding to help you through it, it's going to be a significant event. And those resources that are going to need to be in place after the fact are significant. And it's going to take the whole community to help us get through that. So, okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Amy.
Thank you very much, Sheriff in Chief, for that informative presentation. I would like to now invite our first round of presenters back up to the stage to join the Sheriff in Chief. In order to allow our members of our audience, all of you, to please take this opportunity to ask any question that you would like of our presenters, our very knowledgeable presenters. No question is too weak. Every question is strong. This is your opportunity. These are the experts, so please don't be shy. We have some runners that will come down and make sure that you have a microphone. Someone be brave and ask the first question. There's some questions right up front, but we do have some runners. If you raise your hand, we can get a microphone to you. Let's not be shy. These are the experts. Ask your questions.
With training and inquiries to your group, is any kind of a training session too large? In other words, does the school group call you for training, but if we have industry businesses that want to get training or understanding, can we have a larger group session that includes various facilities from within the municipality, town, village, whatever?
Yeah, so a la carte, whatever you need, right? If you can only allot 20 minutes, and we could talk about that threat assessment management process, and just get that mind in everyone, that mindset, that's beneficial. If we could do that all the way through active shooter response training and actually do run, hide, fight with you, and then do a stop the bleeding course, and that takes a whole 8-hour day, we collectively are here for you. That's the idea is we want to plant seeds in your head, let you take it back to your responsibility and come back to us and say, we have some needs in the preventive side of this thing. The Greece case that you saw a few years ago at Greece High School, they had just got done training their staff on threat assessment. And it was what's called leakage. Kids talking around the table in the lunchroom. One kid said one thing too much. Someone else picked up on that because they were trained in threat management, brought that forward, and we were able to prevent a terrorist event down in the Binghamton area, right? Going to Catskill Mountains, I believe it was. But that was because the students and the faculty and the security staff had just got the training in threat assessment. And they knew they could do something with that information.
Thank you for that great question. I would ask that you state your name and tell us the organization you're with so that we can be more personable with you. Thank you. Next question. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Bob Fusen from Huntington Falls Lima Central School. Do you guys provide, I was just asked yesterday by building principals, administrators, incident command training. So, that if there's an incident in a building, we have a plan, but the building administrator wants, it's usually geared toward fire.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if there's a local, I know there's a FEMA and a Homeland Security course, but they want somebody to come in and provide training.
So if I'm hearing you right, you're looking for that localized flavor to that incident command, right? Yes, we will, absolutely. We challenge ourselves to continue to do that too. We run rehearsals and drills with our own command staff all the time. That formal NIMS class, the ICS classes that are out there and available, those are all national modeled courses, right? The curriculum is built for nationwide delivery. But we will absolutely take that as a template and come sit down with you. We would ask you to come up with a scenario. We'd ask you to what is your biggest concern, right? What are you most concerned about happening at your facility? We'll design a little training around that. We'll probably sit around the table, discuss it first, and then I'd encourage you to take the next step to a tabletop exercise, right? And we would absolutely help you facilitate that and then come in and play the role of first responders.
Thank you. Right over here. Thank you.
Good morning. Mike Syracuse from L3 Harris. It's just mainly a general observation on how law enforcement responds to these situations and civilians knowing the change and the active shooters actually learning from this too. So it's just a combination of all that, and it's an amazing process on how you respond and how we should respond as civilians too, knowing that you may come in quicker than in past situations.
Thank you. And we may even bypass you for shot. I mean, these are conversations we should have, not to make people paranoid, just prepared. Why are we doing the things we're doing should be answered ahead of time as much as possible. Another thing about this whole prevention side, every one of these targeted violence cases are pre-planned. You've seen the ladder, right? They're not going to go willy-nilly to the local high school and just see if they can get in through the doors with their AR-15 and happen to see if there's a bunch of students there that particular time and happen to see where security is and maybe security's there, maybe they don't. These are all targeted violence cases that are pre-planned, right? Look at the planning that went into Buffalo, right? Recons were done. Interviews were done inside this store, right? So with that being said, there's a chance to see something, say something. that's another thing we want to train you in. But also think about if you're training, you're hardening your target, you're training your people. You're saying that you come to my facility, it's going to be the most difficult facility to get into, most difficult facility to kill mass casualties because we have lockdown procedures, we drill these. It's not, you're preventing it because the bad guy's studying you also, and he's going to say, I'm not going there. They're prepared. I'm going to go over here where they're less prepared. That sounds sucks for the people over here, but it's a fact. They're pre-planning, and they're looking for the easiest target. They're after one thing. What is this guy after in Buffalo? They're after one, it's a body count. I hate to say it, but let's be realistic. They're after a body count, right? So if they can get more bodies over here more efficiently, more easy, so the training you're doing, the hardening of the target, the preparation, even the stopping the bleed, that person's also going to look at you and say, that's probably not the place I have to go today if I'm going to get a mass casualty incident. They're not going to start a fire in a building like this. They're going to go to an old dilapidated house and start a fire because it has no fire codes, right? If they want to start a fire. Thanks.
One more over here. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Heather New. I'm the Legislative Director for Assemblymember Jem Lunsford. We are incredibly lucky because we share a building with East Rochester Police Department. However, does the training that ROCTAC offers help identify the line between what is perhaps ill-advised word choice and genuine threat?
So when you talk about a threat, I want to stress that it's behavior-based. The threat assessment is behavior-based. And so it's more than just one behavior. It's a trend of behaviors. And again, to steal the line from Joe, who I apologize, I had to leave early, these behaviors are observable. If they're observable, they can be reported. If they can be reported, they can be classified, and they're classified on that pathway to violence. So a threat in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean a ROCTAC case. What are the other behaviors? So it's important to start asking those questions. And what we would train is, what are the questions that we want to ask? What else do we want to know to see where this might go? And if it lands on that pathway, if you have a sustained grievance, an obsession with a grievance, or if they collect grievances, and there's this leakage, they're saying, whether it's direct or indirect things, usually through social media, about a violent solution to their grievance, okay, you've really got our attention now. Now, of course, the next question is, are they researching anything? So that's what we want to know, and that's what we would train. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you. We'll take one from the middle. Thank you.
Hi. Oops, sorry. I'm Laura Wink. I work at Mary Carey Children's Center. We are working on our threat assessment tool right now, and I'm curious about how, what's the turnaround time from we determine that there's a threat from perhaps one of our staff, and then we submit it to you for assessment. What is the turnaround time on that?
So ROCTAC meets on the second and fourth Wednesdays of each month. We have had unscheduled meetings. One of the case studies that I wanted to present, but it was just too long for this presentation, it presented itself on a Thursday night, or maybe a Wednesday night, and we met, 23 agencies met at the A-Zone substation on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, and started addressing it right then and there. The threat at that point was in the hospital, so we knew that he wasn't going anywhere. So if need be, if we determine this is, hey, this might need some quicker attention, then we'll do an unscheduled meeting.
Good morning, Todd and Greg. Thank you for an excellent program, gentlemen. Michael Hardy with the Veterans Outreach Center. You're talking a lot about facilities. How about those of us in the room who are doing events in facilities that aren't our expertise and or outside events? Are there resources available for us to plan those outdoor events?
I'll start on that. So, regardless of your location, the concept is the same, right? If you're going to hold an outside event, a special event, anything like that, the same threat assessment model will be in place. Those resources are still available to you. If you're looking for support from law enforcement agency as far as pre-planning that event and putting measures in place, we certainly can provide that. We're as flexible as we possibly can be. We're looking for you to make us aware of the event. That you wouldn't believe how many public events are going on that we're not aware of, and then we end up having to respond to after the fact. But if you share with us what your plans are, we can provide whatever you're looking for. We'll try our best, right? We'll provide input on that. We'll also be in place if you come to us at that planning stage and say, look, I have a name that just isn't sticking right with me, and I think we need to look further at this. That's what's causing me concern right now. Then we'll also take that on the, if it goes to ROCTAC, we can do that quickly, as Greg said, or if it doesn't go that far, we'll at least be there and be aware of your concerns.
Great question so far. We'll take one over here.
Good morning. I'm Jim Brown with the Floriano Convention Center. And first of all, thank you for your service and all you're doing to keep us safe. This is a general question. I noticed it kind of weaved through most of the presentations about the web, the dark web, social media. I'm curious to know how much of your resources now are having to be directed towards those sources of information, and how do you disseminate the mountains of information that comes through?
And we also have constitutional rights of privacy and all these other things that we're constantly mitigating through in the back of our minds, right? So, we see a lot of things, post shootings that they posted online. Well, most often that's not on Facebook Messenger, right? Most often that's not on Twitter for 30,000 people to see. These deep, dark places that are constantly changing. So you got professional organizations like the FBI that do that for terrorism. But what we talked about, just yesterday we had a case, and again, who's monitoring this person's social media? Every 24 hours, we should go at least look on it. If they gave us some leakage or gave us some escalation clues on that, at least if it's there, if we can see it, we could do something about it, right? But it's a deep, dark web, and it's very difficult to get into some of these sites because they're constantly changing, like everything else. So it's part of our operational plans. It's part of our intelligence gathering. It's part of our tripwires, we call them. They might give that clue that they just stepped over a line. As we see the manifestos come out, 20 minutes before type thing. But we just got to be in their location to see those things. Most often, here's the problem. Someone's seen something. Someone knows that conversation is occurring. They just haven't said it, right? So we can't find every dark web. It's impossible for us to be on all those sites at one time. You can have algorithms and search engines and all that good stuff. But the point is he's conversing with someone, right? And we got to get that person comfortable saying, I think they went over the line. I'm going to report that to a local official. Just want to add two more things. The question in the back, also going back to your mass gathering locations, if it's outside, we need to talk about your physical security of that location. We can help you out with those things. But, Las Vegas, the shooting in Las Vegas taught us something about, there was a lot of control of ingress or egress. It was a concert, right? Sell tickets, come in here, and everybody was locked into a killing field when the sniper was up several floors on a roof. How do all those people disperse? We see run, hide, fight, yet you got them caged in because of the security concerns there. So mass ingress one thing, mass egress points are something you need to talk about, right? Ramming on parades is something we need to talk about. So not paranoid, just prepared, that's all.
Just to add, Sheriff, from a corporate standpoint or from the schools, the businesses, we can all have social media policies, right? I know a lot of employees, students, everyone's using social media. It's tough to monitor. But as people come forward, employees, students, folks come forward and say, hey, this is a little disturbing. Hey, this was really politically motivated. I know it's going to upset a lot of people at the workplace. Recognize that stuff. Take it seriously. Speak with those employees. Make them understand what your policies are. We talk a lot about line of sight, being able to take temperatures, understand where people are coming from. Are they being impulsive? Are they planning something? Stuff like that. Don't let an opportunity slip by where you have an opportunity to speak to someone, ask them questions, and hold them accountable for how they're acting on social media.
And just to rest assured, this is holistic, preventive, with a lot of empathy and compassion. In particular, people that not every person that has a mental health diagnosis is dangerous, right? We're very concerned about these things that we don't want to come out like we're just looking for people that are having a mental health crisis. No, we're looking for that person to get help, right? It's all about helping that person, which makes us all safer. So just want to emphasize that point. It's not a gotcha moment. It's not a law enforcement. We're the impetus behind it because we got some opportunities, but there's 28 participating member agencies and very few of those are law enforcement. So
Sorry. I just want to emphasize, even when there's police involvement, because the law enforcement is really one spoke in that whole wheel of the prevention. Even when we're involved, the hope, the intent is to be restorative. So if we make an arrest, well, we want to hopefully channel that through special court like mental health court or veterans court or whatever's most appropriate, because ultimately the goal is to be restorative. I don't get any free toasters for handcuffing people. So if we can prevent those problems and we can live a safer life as a community, then fantastic.
Question over here.
Hi, Kim Allen from Dixon Schwabel and Company. First, I just want to extend my gratitude to you all and my deep sense of pride to live in a community that puts this kind of effort forward to protect us. So thank you very much for the energy you're putting towards this. My question is around the jurisdiction of this. So our company is in Monroe County, but right on the edge of Ontario County. Do you cover the 9-county region, this particular group, or is it just Monroe County in the city of Rochester?
Wherever you need us, we'll be there. Simple as that. There's no jurisdiction. We intentionally called this ROCTAC just because we all know ROC is a general area, right? And it wasn't MCSO, Monroe County Sheriffs, or anything like that. We intentionally even chose a name to make it this broad-based thing. We've been in contact with the contingency county sheriffs. If they want to absorb ROCTAC, because they all have to go through an executive order just mandated, everybody starts a threat assessment at their county level. That's one of the most recent responses to Buffalo, the massacre in Buffalo. And so we offer this, don't create your own ROCTAC. We'll bring you on board with us or steal other stuff. But the point is, if they don't have one, we'll go to Binghamton. We don't care. We really don't care. This is about saving lives, and we'll make the other jurisdictions aware that we're there, but we'll go wherever we got to go.
I'm going to do a little brag on the sheriff and ROCTAC for a second. ROCTAC is the first one in the state, one of the first in the country to do what we do, how we do it, the multidisciplinary, restorative, preferably approach to preventing this. It's basically going to be the model for New York State under the governor's new executive order since Buffalo. So counties throughout the state are going to have versions of ROCTAC, right? It's specific to the community. And some may be regional. I know a couple counties that I've spoken with, they're going to combine their counties and combine the resources, especially if they're more rural. And it's just cost effective and makes sense for them to do it that way. So the cross-county issue, I see that going to where you have groups that talk the same language, have similar resources, and while we will right now, we'll go regional if we have to, no problem. I think this is going to be a network throughout the state eventually, much like Florida did after Parkland.
These are all great questions. Keep them coming. I'm told we have a little more time. Right over here to the right. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Leduca with Visit Rochester. My question has to do with confidentiality. Have you had any examples of retaliation for whistleblowers? How do you handle the confidentiality, whether it's a viable threat or not, for the person that's being questioned?
So we don't, it's rare that somebody would know who voiced the concern, but oftentimes when that is voiced, they already know. The person knows they're putting out there. They know how they're behaving at work. And again, what's important is that the organization is still maintaining control. Okay, so if you were to come to ROCTAC from XYZ Corporation, a police officer doesn't knock on this person's door the next day and say, hey, Greg Wildman from XYZ Corporation said that you're a high risk for committing an act of targeted violence. More likely, we're going to give them those things so that perhaps you'll be able to introduce, as an organization, you'll be able to introduce some of those resources or part of your plan. Recently, we had, it's a global organization that has a large presence in Rochester, and they had a person of concern. And their security people are all retired FBI and Secret Service. They get this. They came in and they had a strategy. We enhanced it, and most of what we did really was connect them with the resources we have here. They didn't know Rochester. They're out of Boston or someplace. So they don't know about our FIT team, which is fantastic, our forensic intervention team. They don't know about what the police will or won't do. They didn't know about what our hospitals can do here, what some of our private sector partners like Kodak and Wegmans will help them with, just even in terms of connecting them with resources. So that was hugely beneficial. Now, I've kept in contact with them, and their frustration is with their human resources department. They're not buying it necessarily, the plan. So the people that did this their whole careers and now in their second career, They're having trouble selling that to the human resources. I say that because we would love to come out and train people about how this works and how it's been successful.
Just add to that, Greg. Come from the corporate world, you really need to have someone championing for the right thing. Like I said earlier, it's very easy to make this somebody else's problem. Very quickly, it can become your problem. It's already a potential issue in the community, right? There shouldn't have to be any more motivation. You have to do the right thing. So I think, what I've seen from giving advice or from, sharing experiences is, there's a threat, and you have to champion within your company, within your organization, to align those company partners, those decision makers, to do the right thing. And I think once they come and meet and they understand the options, the advice, the perspective that's given, everyone's shoulders kind of relax and they say, okay, not everyone's going to swarm our facility and go take someone in, right? More than likely, I've never heard of that. And in the 38, 39 cases that we've looked at, that I've been a part of, normally it's connecting you with resources, giving you advice, and giving you support to do what you as a company, as an organization, feel comfortable and feel is the right thing to do. And it's no more, no less. When it comes to someone being blown in as a whistleblower, we all have those already in our company. We have anonymous phone numbers, whistleblower complaints, issues that come through supervisors. None of that stuff is different. None of that stuff has changed. That's definitely something that I wouldn't worry about. But if it is, speak about it.
And I want to emphasize, the most you can lose is an hour of your time. You can come to ROCTAC, you can present a case, you can say, I don't like any of that, I'm not going to do any of that. You're not obligated to do any of it. So there's nothing for you to lose except for an hour of time, but you may walk away with things.
Let's keep these good questions coming. Yes.
I guess, if I could, just as a member of the committee, is that, we think about, HR, okay? And I would encourage those that work in the HR department to think about, if they do have to fire somebody for good cause, that they think about what that person might need once they, have to leave that building or that business. Have you thought about maybe, okay, yeah, that person might have some issues, financial issues, mental health issues, things of that nature. What can you do to prepare them before you kick them out the door?
Thanks, Carla.
All right, we have enough time for a couple more questions. These are the experts, so please, here's your chance to ask. Great questions so far, really. Two more, come on. Free toaster, Sheriff says.
I need a new toaster.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I would like to thank you all for those who did ask questions, and please give all of our presenters a round of applause. Thank you all. Before I invite Bob Duffy to give his closing remarks, I personally want to thank you for allowing me to be your MC and facilitator for this event today, hosted by the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, and ROCTAC. We are so thankful for the work that is being done. I can speak to this personally as I've been with the Sheriff's Office now for 4.5 years to ensure that our community stays safe, protected, and informed. Thank you all once again.
Just very briefly, another round of applause for Sheriff Baxter and his great ROCTAC team. This is phenomenal. It's one of the most compelling training sessions that I think we've been through in a long time, and I think it's been mentioned a couple of times. This is not something that's done commonly. This is an innovation started here. by these leaders, a great public-private partnership focused on saving lives and preventing. I just hope that today is maybe the start. If you're not involved already, I know several committee members are here from ROCTAC. I would urge you to go back to your respective companies, reach out to the sheriff's team directly, reach out to us. We'll connect you to the sheriff and his team. It's something we'll do as a chamber, but you look at the news every day and you can't help but look at shootings, mass shootings almost on a daily basis. So it is timely, it is important, it's critical, it's about saving lives. And I think going back to the chief deputy's comments, the response on Scottsville Road, imagine if that was real. I think that response in itself shows you how proud we are of the people that train and respond that quickly. It was a phenomenal response, and God forbid it really was a hoax. If it had not been, I think you would have seen a response that would have saved lives. I think that doesn't happen by accident. It happens as leadership, it's training, and very, very proud of law enforcement, what they do every day that you might not see in the news, but this was just a tremendous, tremendous session. So please follow up. I want to, again, thank the sheriff and his great ROCTAC team. I want to thank all of you for coming. I also want to thank our sponsors. And yes, there are free toasters for Sergeant Wildman. It'll be available afterwards. I want to thank our great events team, Susan George, Cassidy Franklin, Gina Stein, and the rest of our chamber team for helping. It really is a partnership to put this together. The museum for sponsoring and hosting us today. We appreciate that. And please go home, follow up with this. Let us know if we could help. But again, to Sheriff Baxter and his great team, this is just a phenomenal training opportunity and something that we'll take full advantage of. So be safe. God bless you, and thanks for coming.